any idea when you moved here from Oklahoma 35 years ago that you would still be here? I mean, it was like probably not in the world of broadcasting.
No, in broadcasting, the way it works in broadcasting is you move up from market to market. You spend a couple of years in a market, then you go to a bigger market. And so I did that here too. At Q2, I lasted about 6 years. And then I got a job offering to go to Seattle, which is a larger market. So we went right away and we got up there and saw what it was like to live in a large market. Now, Seattle, beautiful city. It really was back in the 90s when we went. But it's got a lot of people. Property values are elevated really high. Oh, and only $1 million for this home. And I said, my goodness, we can afford $1 million home. But that's what they were in Seattle. And so we lasted there for a couple of years. And then the wife and I had an opportunity to come back home here to the Billings area. I called Al Nash, who was our news director at the time. I said, you got any openings here? And he says, well, you know, strangely enough, Rob Griggs just turned in his notice, and he's going to leave to become a minister. And we think, well, that's a sign from God. Better hop on that. And so Al Nash hired us right back, and we came back and moved in, and here it is. Here's been, you know, some 32 years later. It's just simply amazing.
Talk about how the world of weather has changed, because you know, I've been around a long time as well, and I remember when weather was almost an afterthought for the newscast. And boy, it's a no longer an afterthought. It's how many times did we suddenly, Bob, you're leading the show?
Yeah. Well, I can remember I had an agent, and her name was Shirley Barrett. She had a really deep, gravelly voice, and Shirley talked like this. God bless her soul. But she said, Bob, there's only, I'll do it like Shirley Barrett said, Bob, there's like 3 ways. You got to be the comedian, you got to be a scientist, or you got to be the guy who says, hey, look what I found out what's happening in weather today. And so that was the 3 people, that was the 3 kind of weather people we wanted back in those days. And so back then, our forecast was good for maybe about 2 or 3 days to be pretty accurate. But now, with new computer models and the science has advanced so far, we're getting pretty good out to 7 days. And a lot of places, now even here at Q2, we have a 10-day forecast. Now I have to admit, I'm still not sold on the 10-day one, but the 7-day forecast is still pretty good. It's pretty solid because we got some good computer models. We have one called a GFS, which is a gridded forecast system. And that one is pretty solid. That's one we use for estimating snowfall. Now, sometimes the first times out of the year, it estimates it a little too high. We got to kind of tweak it in and tone it back in. But the ability to go farther out in the future with very little information, it just amazes me. You know, Jay, what it's like when you're forecasting the weather, it's kind of like you've got a movie and you get to see maybe 2 or 3 frames of the movie about midway through, and then you want to know what's going to happen at the end of the movie, and that's our job to tell you what it is without seeing the movie. That's what's kind of like doing the weather. You look at a computer model, see where we're going, you take educated guesses, and quite often, sometimes you're wrong, sometimes you're right on. And in most cases here at Q2, we've been really fortunate. We've got a lot of help from the National Weather Service. These guys, best weather service I've been associated with in the country. And I've been from Oklahoma to Seattle, but the local NWS here in Billings, they're top flight. They're always willing to help you no matter what. So hats off to those guys. But it's really changed through the years because of all of the technology that has happened. I mean, the computer, everything's instantly now. And I talk about folks like what they call the European model. I get ribbed about that. Well, we don't want no European model. They're pretty, you know. Well, we'll use something like that, or sometimes we use the North American model, but we've got like 5 or 6 computer models to judge from and see what's happening in the weather, and we look at that every day just to see what's going to happen. So used to be you draw a couple of things on a graphic, and that was your weathercast. I remember, Jay, back when we first started, we had this, it was up in the control room, and it was just they called it it was the Chiron character generator. And the Chiron character generator, the weather guy had like 8 pages on that. That's all we had. And we had to put all that in, and that's all we had. And so you got your forecast from the National Weather Service. You typed in what the forecast was going to be, but you didn't draw any maps or anything like that. No, you got those from CBS on their daily electronic feed. And so you'd have your maps fed to you, and you'd look at them, but now we generate our own maps. And it actually makes it a little more nicer. I think you can kind of get out there and push the envelope a little bit more and see what's going to happen when it comes to the weather. You can kind of lean into one. Well, I don't like this model. Let's go with this way. So we have the ability to do that. So that's what's happening. It has just changed drastically, Jay, over the years.
And the viewers have changed. Their technology right at their fingertips. They can look at your forecast over and over, see what are they. I think before they were a little more easy on the weatherman, but now they expect you to have it right, and they're kind of brutal at times.
Everything on demand, that's for sure. And when I saw that first come out with your telephone with the weather graphics on that, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm not going to be here too much longer, am I? But fortunately, those same viewers, while they have what the end product is in their hand, a lot of folks want to know, well, how do we get to there? How come it's going to be snowing today and not tomorrow? And how come we didn't get too much snow? That's where my job comes in. We tell you, well, we weren't expecting much snow anyway. It's going to race through, caught up in the jet stream, is not going to be here long. And so that's what we talk about. That's why we like to tell you why the weather's doing what it is, not just what the end product is.
I always tell people the weather, you have the hardest job. The news people just tell people what happened. You have to forecast the future.
Kind of like forecasting a bank robbery, isn't it? You got to know. Yeah, it's news is you tell what the I guess I don't do news, so I guess you tell them.
Oh yes, you do.
You tell us what the facts is, but for us, yeah, we kind of go out and say, well, here's what's happening to weather, and we have to come up and figure out why it's going to do that, and that's what our biggest problem is. It's some days I'll look at this computer map and I'll think, well, heck, how is that going to happen? I don't see how this is going to get to here or there. So then we go to another computer model. Oh, okay, so now it all makes sense. So we've got all these things to check each other computer model out. And when all the computer models agree, in the Weather Center, it's like having a party, because now we know what's going to happen. So that's what.
You're pretty much self-taught, because you didn't come here with all these computer skills. You had to pick it up as the computers developed.
Yeah, that's right. I took computer science in college, and the computers we used in college, I went to college in Oklahoma, filled an entire room. We had key punch operator. Remember the IBM 1130? It was just a big old monster of a computer, and it spit out, the paper was it was just weird. And you'd type in little cards and punch little holes in the cards, and then you'd put those punched out cards in the computer, and that's how it figured out what it did. But since then, now we've got the laptops, and now we've got all the stuff, all the computer model runs, and boy, it really has become quite the deal. So, and in fact, so one of the things we do, Jay, is, and I've been doing this ever since I started here, 1987, I got my seal of approval from the National Weather Association. In order to get that, you have to take a test. You got to go to their annual meetings every year, or at least every other year, and that's what I would do. Save up my money, go to the annual meeting, and then we learn what's happening in the latest computer stuff. And so it was continuing education. So yeah, you're right. I had to learn it all on my own.
Learn on the fly.
Yeah, on the job training, we called it. That was it, yeah.
Let's talk about some of the big weather events. You know, we've got the old film here of the big flood in Billings and the big snowstorms, but you oversaw some fairly dramatic weather events, and Billings has been kind of in the crosshairs of some major events.
I think that the one that sticks in my mind is obviously the Father's Day tornado in 2010. That's the one where Dan Miller was there at Airport Road and Main Street, and God bless you, Dan Miller. You didn't cuss. You didn't say anything. He just kept rolling, and this tornado is on top of the metro roof, and it just teared it up. And Dan's got some of the best footage we've ever seen. I mean, he wasn't, tenth of a mile away from that tornado. It was amazing, and he just kept rolling. And he told his wife to get into the freezer at the gas station across the street, and he just kept shooting us. So we got a lot of good information out of that particular tornado. That's the one that sticks in a lot of folks' minds. Another event was 1999. I was thinking around June or so. Maybe it was April, maybe July. We had some more. It looked like a tornado. It was what turned out to be what we called a scud cloud, but it was just a bunch of clouds kind of being sucked up into a thunderstorm, but this sucked it up in kind of a rotation way, and it kind of looked like a rotating funnel cloud. And we were on the air with that, and we lost all of our computer stuff. So the only thing we had at that point in time was the iCam. And we were showing the iCam all the time and talking about that. We sent people, I remember Steve Brill, one of our former weather people, went out to with a camera crew, and we're getting good shots of that particular funnel cloud. But we stayed on the air, I guess 4 or 5 hours, I think, and just followed all that evening. And then finally the storm went away, and that was it. And that's some of the bigger events, the severe thunderstorms. Most of the stuff, Jay, we get is thunderstorms and hail.
Right.
We get a lot of hail. I mean, how many talk to an insurance agent, right? They got a lot of hail damage out here in this town. That's our big problem is those. And some of I think 1991, we had some really big storms. I wasn't here then, but I'd heard about it. And there was like baseball-size hail, softball-size hail, fell in the Billings area. I was in Seattle back in '91. And I think it was in July of '91, and boy, it just tore up Lockwood and places like that.
Or is it just me? Are we having more severe weather, or do we have better technology to track that weather?
Well, I can tell you what's happened is we had so many severe thunderstorm warnings, they have actually changed the criteria. It used to be if you had 3/4 inch size hail, they'd put out a severe thunderstorm warning. And we used to have that all the time. Now it's got to be 1 inch size hail before they put out a severe thunderstorm warning, or it's got to have winds at 57 miles per hour or greater. So that's the new criteria. So it seems like we haven't had as many severe thunderstorm warnings because of that. But just about every thunderstorm we would get would probably, dump at least 3/4 inch size hail all the time. And so we used to be, I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, we'd have more severe thunderstorm warnings in the afternoon. Now it seems like the most busy time of year seems like around the 4th of July. That's when we have most of our severe thunderstorms that have tornadic activity in them. And it seems like they're always firing up around the airport for some reason. I guess God doesn't like the airport in town.
And people love to send in their pictures now. I mean, we've got eyes all over the place.
That has changed everything for us, Jay. Remember, we used to send our photographers out with the big cameras on their shoulder and try and catch all these things. Now we've got people sending us their stuff from Facebook. And that Father's Day tornado, that's when we discovered. I remember we even did a special report about that, and you anchored it, Jay. Had all this great video from our viewers out there, sent it in to us on Facebook or something like that. And man, did we have that was just a really good report. We rely on them now every day, and that's why every night we put pictures from our viewers in just to keep them, sending them in. We like that, and so please send in your more pictures.
And they like it too.
Yeah.
You anchored the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon for years. How many years, Bob?
Oh, geez, let's see.
And we hardly even carry that anymore. We still do, but nothing like it used to be. Yeah. Tell us your experience there when they came and said, would you like to host a telethon?
Yeah, I had been hosting the Arthritis Foundation telethon, so I had a little bit of experience with that and with Dan Miller. But the reason, it used to be Lee Lariva and Pam Hofferberg. They used to host the Muscular Dystrophy telethon, and they did it for a while, for a long time. I don't remember, I can't tell you how many times I did it, probably 10, 15, 20, something like that. And then Lee Lariva died. He worked on our station and he died, and Pam didn't want to do it anymore, so they asked me if I would do it with Pam, and then she said, oh yeah, we'll do it for a little while. And so then after a while, they changed it to have some of the other anchors around their states, around the state, come in and host the MDA telethon with me with that. And so that turned out to be a lot of fun. We did that, but I think the reason we don't do it anymore is it moved from a CBS affiliate to an ABC affiliate, and so now that's why you don't see me doing it anymore. Somebody else on ABC stations around the country are doing it.
That was always the Labor Day telethon for Jerry's kids.
That sure was. And Jerry decided not to do it after a while. He had a good time with it, but he was getting into his 80s by the time. He was just having a hard time with it anymore. So I think I don't know if they either asked him to leave or if it was his idea. He just couldn't do it anymore because he's staying up all night. He's an old man. He needs to sleep. What do I know?
Did you ever meet Jerry Lewis?
Yes, I met Jerry at Las Vegas one time. We were having an information meeting with Jerry and all the other folks from Muscular Dystrophy Association, and he's a funny guy. He sure is. A lot of folks say he's kind of a mean fellow. I never saw that, but he was always kind and pleasant to me. And Ed McMahon also was there with Jerry, and I met Ed one time, talked to Ed on the telephone another time, and they were just pros, just consummate pros. That's why they did so well at the telethons for all these years. They were just good people.
So people have been inviting you into their front rooms, bedrooms, wherever they're watching their TV for 35 plus years. What's it like to go to Walmart as Bob McGuire?
Well, I go early in the morning. I go on Friday mornings and stuff, maybe sometimes Saturday mornings. We go there about 7 o'clock. So I don't see that many people, but I kind of stay at low profile most of the time. But yeah, a lot of people come and talk to me, and I like that. And because our audience has been, you guys, I tell you what, the audience has been so good to me over the last 35 years. I want to take this time and thank you for being such a great audience, watching us for all these years. Sometimes we felt like we deserved for you to watch us, but we never demanded it, and so we always thought we put out a good product, and I'm so happy that you guys watched us for all those years. Great news habits you guys have. Keep them up. We wanted to keep going. So, but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I do get stopped in Billings, and that's fine. And it's not like the movie Groundhog Day, where the same thing happens over and over again. I'm at the point where it's just kind of nice to see people and just chat with them, and it's kind of nice. So we enjoyed that.
And everyone wants to talk about the weather. Everyone can talk about the weather.
Yeah.
Do you ever get tired of talking about the weather?
Yeah, oh boy, that's a good question. You know, if it's an honest to goodness question, that doesn't bother me. But it's just to be a wisecracker or something like that, and that gets a little old after a while. But if people want to know, hey, I'm going to go to Missoula and it's going to be snowing. When can I go? You know, those are always good questions. But hey, liar McGuire, tell me why you missed that. That I never got. That I never did like that. I have to admit.
No, unfortunately, your name rhymes with that, but
rhymes so well.
We're not going to go there.
Thank you, Kurt Anthony. We want to thank you. I once was told, no matter how they say your name, if they get your name right, that's good advertising. So just go with it. And so that's the way I am.
All publicity is good publicity when you're in our business.
Right. So thank you, Kurt Anthony, for that.
How about some, sitting on the news desk, whenever anything went wrong, let's go to Bob in the Weather Center. We would throw it to you, and you would have to fill forever. And you never complained, and you made it look so easy. But those of us here know how not easy it is. It's very hard.
The thing about this, Jay, is that, the news guys, and I don't know if folks are aware that we have teleprompters here, and I'm looking at one right now, and we have on it a script and stuff, and the news guys, if that teleprompter goes out, they've got a backup thing on the desk, but they're going to look down and find where they're at really quick. So let's go to the weatherman. He doesn't have a script on the teleprompter. He's just doing it off the cuff, as they say, and that gives you guys time to find out where your place is and figure out what you're gonna do next. But I got a funny story I got to tell you. Many years ago, when I first started in this business, we had a little kind of like a treadmill that we put our scripts on, and they come out with the scripts and all just loose papers, and they'd put them on the treadmill, and then we had a little thing that would operate it, and it would just go right in front of a TV camera, and it'd put it up on top of the television. So, well, one day we're running late, as it always is, late breaking news or something. Somebody's coming out of the control room with the scripts in their hand, and they trip over one of the camera cables. The papers go everywhere. And say, oh my God. And so what do? You're an anchor. And I just happened to be sitting at the desk, and he said, Bob, tell us all about the weather. So I was able to fill with that for a while, but my goodness, that was something. It had where's page one, and all these people on hands and knees looking around the floor. I think that was in the other studio over there, but oh my goodness, it was funny, just funny.
So you were put on the spot, man. We did those backyard barbecues. Sometimes the microwave would go out. Any other funny stories? I know you said in Seattle once you had to fill for 6 minutes.
Yes, that was, well, Seattle had the same equipment we had here at Q2. It was called the ACR 25. We called them FRED, which was an acronym for effing ridiculous device. So we called them that. And they had the same issue we had one time in Seattle. Their FRED went down, and fortunately, back then we still had snow on the ground in Seattle. And I had all these passports. Passport would be like, what's Stevens Pass doing, and what's Snohomish passes? Had all these different passes where the roadways goes over the mountains. And normally I would just race through those guys. So they're saying, Bob, can you keep filling, stretch. This is a sign for stretch, And so I would have normally had like 4 minutes in the weather to do it that one day. And thanks to the pass reports that morning, I was able to fill for 6 minutes, and just talking about, well, over there in Stevens County, Stevens Pass, there's got a lot of snow up there. How much snow, you may ask? So I just really stretched that out. And so fortunately I had enough passes, and it just sounded real natural, and it worked out well. Another funny thing we had here was, I believe it has to do with Rob Monaco, one of our directors up here. He's just a funny guy. You don't have no idea how creative these people are in our department, in our newsroom and everything. But I had my gallbladder taken out one time, and I'd missed a few days. And so Rob says to me, you know what we ought to do? We ought to get a little round piece of cardboard and paint it chroma key green. And chroma key green gives us the ability to, wherever the camera sees the chroma key green, it can erase that and put whatever you want into it. And so one day I'm standing in front of the board, and I said, yeah, just had the operation. And then I had this thing right there. And so you could see right through me. I said, yep, gallbladder came out. Everything's just fine. Oh, it was just a funny gag, but that was Rob Monaco's idea. Another one we had, I used to say, well, that old storm's like a big old bear. And so we were talking about a big old bear of a winter storm coming in. And up in the control room, they found a polar bear. polar bear video, and they put that up instead of my weather map. So I started talking about, well, there's that polar bear jumping over Alaska, and here comes down to Canada and making his way into Montana. So we had some fun stories like that.
Where did your Bobisms come from? The howling like a big dog,
Yeah.
the splash and dash. They're well documented, but they just kind of evolved, I think.
Well, I picked up some of those in Oklahoma. I came here, I started my career in Oklahoma in radio. And then the TV station there, their main weather guy wanted to go into sales. So they asked, anybody in radio? Hey, anybody want to be a weatherman? So I said, I'll give it a shot, why not? And so I auditioned for it and did it. And so I picked up a lot of those Bobisms from Texas, Dallas, and places like that. Big old bear, well, that was another one. That's bigger than Dallas. But the howling like a big dog, that's one I think I made up. And we had another one, we got snizzle falling, and that came from Seattle because it was raining and snowing at the same time. So instead of drizzle, I wanted to say drizzle and snow, and I just said snizzle at the same time. It just kind of worked up that way.
And snowflowers.
Snowflowers, that's you want to say snow showers, and it came out to be snowflowers. So we've had a lot of fun with those. So.
We've had a lot of fun at your expense, but we were laughing with you, Bob,
Yes,
not laughing at you.
Yeah.
Anything else come to mind? Just funny stuff. I can think of a lot, but this is a high-pressure job. I hate to tell you, but it's easy to get mad at computers that aren't cooperating as you're going on air.
That's funny. When we had this old IBM computer. It was a slow thing, and I'm waiting for it to wake up and do its job. In fact, it was just slow, and you could hear me talking to the computer at the top of my lungs. Come on, we want you to wake up, stuff like that. Only I use different words.
Don't we all?
Then I was told, you're close to a microphone. You don't want to say those words anymore. So yeah, that made sense. So I had to stay out of the newsroom or out of the studio for that. But when I first started, we didn't always have computer graphics in the weather system. I had a big board. It was a magnetic board.
I was saying we had magnets.
Yeah, and you'd put the big Mr. Sun was a magnet, had Mr. Moon was a magnet, and you'd put those on a board. And then we had a little cold fronts, and we had numbers we could put with magnets on it. And so that's what I started out with. And we walk over to a green piece of paper with a little pointer stick. We called that the pointer stick. And then we would put that in front of the green piece of paper, and then they'd put the black and white satellite imagery on, because of the chroma key effect. And all you would see is a little red arrow, and I would have to move my stick, kind of like move my stick wherever it went. And so
it was like the telestrator.
Yes, it really was. Yeah, that was
the first telestrator ever.
Oh, so that's how we did the weather, and I thought this is really kind of goofy. And so, because in Oklahoma we had been doing it with the chroma key where the guy stood in front of the map instead of just putting a little pointer in front of it. But the guy named Rick Dunn says, I'm not sure we can do that, but they gave it a try. And a guy named Les Denny was our director then. He says, well, he and Rick Dunn, they figured out a way for us to do it, and we got to where we did chroma key weather here for Q2. And I think I might have been the first one in the city to do chroma key weather. And then we were the first ones to have the Radac 1000 radar. We had the first with the weather radio, weather radar on the air. Oh God, I can't remember how many years ago that was. That was back in the 80s.
Right. Now we take it for granted. All this stuff, the Doppler radar, all the, here's the latest computer models, as you said. Yeah. The only computer model we had before was the one in your head.
That's exactly right. I remember one time we used to get a bunch of stuff from Salt Lake City. It was a company out of Salt Lake City would just send us weather information along with the weather wire, and so that was kind of handy. But I think they started charging us too much money, and we had to do something else, and so we did.
I remember growing up in Billings, I would watch Red Welsh doing the weather, and one of my favorite pictures is of you and Red Welsh over here in his later years. But for someone that grew up in Billings and watching TV, there was several generations represented in that picture.
Yeah, Red Welsh was not the first man to do TV weather here, but he was here for a few years, and I think he was probably in his 80s when I first met him. And he'd call me all the time and give me some hints about what to do on the weather and stuff, and sure appreciated any input he gave me. But he was just a character to talk to. A lot of folks might remember Red. He was telling me one time where he came out of a globe and did the weather in a weird way, and the camera was backwards. Oh, I know what it was. He had this clear board that he stood behind, and on the board was written the United States, and he could draw the cold fronts and draw on the map.
Yep.
and the cameras could flip it around so it would be the correct way. It was amazing how that worked. But he talked about that. We did a story with Red one time about how he was there for the big snowstorm of '55, where we had 42 inches of snow. We talked about that. He said, it looked like we were going to have a couple inches of snow that day. And then that was the Easter weekend, I think, and we wound up with the 42 inches. Yeah, I guess that thing just stalled over us, that's all. That's how far we've come. We would have seen that coming a long time. But
has it sunk in yet that in a couple of weeks you're not going to have to, first of all, get up and, you've been a radio figure as well. You were always up early doing the weather forecast for a variety of different stations, but in a couple of weeks, you're not going to have to get up early, Bob.
No, I'm still going to do cat country for a while.
Okay, so we can still hear you.
Yeah, but I think for me the biggest thing is I'll go home at 11:30, get home at midnight, and I can't go to sleep right away, right? So it's about 12:30, 1 o'clock before you can go to sleep. I plan on going to sleep at like 8 o'clock. That's going to be so nice. Get a full night's sleep, and then get up at 6 o'clock to do the cat country stuff. So I'll do that as long as they'll have me, and I hope that's a while too.
This place is like a magnet. They still bring you back. They keep bringing you back. It's
almost got away.
So what are your plans, you and Lynn, as you kind of move in gracefully into retirement?
Yeah, well, my wife has been retired. This is her third time she retired. She worked at Alzheimer's facility for a long time, and then she went to work for Walmart for a while, and they had her walking on that hard floor at Walmart, and it's getting to be too much for her. I told her, you ought to quit that. And then she went to work at a place called Sally Beauty, and that was fine, and she did pretty good for about a couple of years. But now she's like in her 70s, and she says, I just can't stand around for a long time. It just hurts. So she finally retired from that area this year. I think it was when I went in for my hip operation. She said, I'm going to stay home and nurse him. And so she's been gone most of this year, and she's been retired. She's ready for me to retire. And I'm kind of looking forward to it myself. She's been a trooper. You got to know, we haven't seen each other most of our married life. Maybe that's why we're still married. I mean, because we were kind of like two ships passing in the night. We had different shifts all the time, and she's been a trooper the whole time. My wife, Lynn McGuire, and now it's her turn. So what are we going to do? Well, whatever she says we're going to do, that's what I'll do. So I'm happy about that.
You got that right.
Yeah.
We didn't mention your cancer.
Oh,
that
yeah.
You survived cancer, and you let all the Billings viewers and our station take that journey with you. Yeah. I know it's a little emotional, but
that was a tough one for me. Yeah. Of course, whenever somebody says you have cancer, you don't hear. You hear the word cancer, and then you don't hear anything else they say. At least I did. And we were hoping I had something called diverticulitis, which is very painful. I remember Dr. Red Duke saying, I'm here to tell you, diverticulitis hurts. And we were hoping, because I was hurting. And I had a tumor resting right on the femoral nerve group. And so they went in and did an exploratory surgery, and that's what they found. And I said, well, the good news is we found it fairly early. It was about the size of my pinky. And I can't remember how many centimeters it was. They said maybe 5 or 6 or something. And they showed it to me on the X-ray, and it darn thing looked like a tornado. It really did. It looked like a funnel cloud. But that was my tumor, and I had to take 38 shots of radiation on that thing so they could shrink it up, because it's on the femoral nerve group, which is right next to the femoral artery, which if you cut that femoral artery, you're bleeding out in 8 minutes, maybe 8 seconds. So they had to shrink that thing up a little bit, and then they could go in and get it out. And back 15 years ago when I had that done over in Seattle, I chose Seattle because my wife had lived in Seattle, and I had lived in Seattle, and we kind of knew that area. We could have gone to Salt Lake City, but we chose Seattle because she was familiar with it. And it turns out the doctor who took this tumor out, his specialty was sarcoma tumors, which is what I had. And he was from South Africa, a very distinct British accent out of South Africa. And he did a great job and pulled that thing out of me. And they had a new technique back then where they have the incision. They had this radome that they could go inside the incision and nuke all around there. So if there was any cancer cells they didn't get, they could multiply. And so they essentially killed them all. And so that was the end of that. But it was so funny. They had put 8 hours aside for my operation. And he's back in 4 hours. The doctor's coming back and going to tell my wife 4 hours. She's thinking, oh my God, they found him all laid up in cancer, just sewed him up, and that was it, right? And of course, remember, he's very primitive property. He says, well, Mrs. McGuire, we have some good news for you. We think we've got it all. and we see no further need for any treatment at this time. So my wife says to this very prim and proper doctor, all right, that does it. You're getting a hug. And so this guy, oh gosh, so that was a special time in our life. But and I think the radiation is really the thing that I worked most of the time through radiation. We could do 2 shows a day then, and I worked 1. And I'd have my radiation shot about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I had 2, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. And so I couldn't do the 10 o'clock show because I just wiped out. I couldn't even stay awake. So I got some pretty good rest at that time in my life. But that was a pretty harrowing time. But I did everything the doctor said. And if you ever get cancer, you don't be afraid of needles, because you're going to need those and you're going to poked a lot. But you can survive that. If you get it caught in time, doctors do whatever the doctors say and treat it like a Bible. They say quite often you can come back. I mean, we've had some people, famous people here in town. Former mayor had cancer, right?
Yep.
And stage 4, I believe his was.
Chuck Tooley. Yep.
Chuck Tooley, that's right. And he survived that. So
nice to have that in the rearview mirror. And
it is.
The silver lining is you quit smoking. The cancer was not related to your smoking.
No.
But that was enough. You gave it up.
Yeah, what happened was I smoked for 25 years, and I smoked right after I got divorced. Didn't have much money, but I had money for cigarettes, because cigarettes were much cheaper back then. They were like 50 cents a pack. And so if I smoked a cigarette, it would curb my appetite. And so that worked for a while. But then I got addicted to the darn things. And so I smoked for a long time. And then the price of cigarettes here went up $1 a pack. And I said, that's it. I'm not having them anymore. And so I went on a protest strike. I'm not going to buy you more cigarettes. 10 days later, I get diagnosed with cancer, and the doctor says, "Do you smoke?" And I said, "No, I don't anymore. That's good." So, but it turned out okay. But man, that was a trying time in my life, I have to admit. But see, when you want to quit smoking, you got to find some pain somewhere inside your body. And mine, I had that pain down in my abdomen, where the tumor was, and I'm thinking, what if that pain was in my chest? So every time I wanted a cigarette, I remembered that pain. I don't want that cigarette. And my wife, in 2009, she was a smoker too, and she got a real bad case of pneumonia, and they put a chest tube in her side of her chest. And when she wanted to have a cigarette, she just remembered the pain from that chest tube. She couldn't have a cigarette either, and well, that's how we both quit. People tell you quit smoking all you want, but boy, until you can feel the pain, that's what gets you through, because you get those Joneses for a cigarette, and
right.
But you got the pain to remember. You can put them down real easily. Never look back.
And this year, the pandemic.
Yeah.
We look back on this and all the things that this station had to do to stay on the air, to keep you on the air, to keep everyone safe, and hopefully we're going to continue those. But this has probably been. I know I was glad I was retired this year, because it was a whole new animal.
Well, for me, I work here in the studio by myself basically most of the time. So it was kind of like every day I was working was kind of like a weekend. I've worked a few weekends in my life, and there's nobody in the building on the weekend except maybe 4 or 5 people. And that's all we have now. It's 4 or 5 people. So it was like every day this year was like working on a weekend. So personally, it wasn't that bad for me. I could still come to work and things like that. But what was different is every day we have what's called the Zoom editorial meeting, and we get on our computers, or in my case, my cell phone, and we'd meet up somewhere in Zoom universe, and we'd talk about what we're going to do for the news that day. But that's the only difference. And for me personally, it's kind of like when I went to have my operation, which was in March for a new hip. Everyone else kind of went away from me. When I came back, well, where is everybody? Nobody in the building anymore. So it was just strange. Just like everyone else went out to work, went out on vacation, the same thing I did.
Well, Bob, I want to thank you for being such a great coworker, and on behalf of all the viewers in Montana and Billings, it's been, I can't believe your career is winding down, but it's never quite over.
Yeah, that's the thing I remember. I keep telling people, I can't believe we made a career out of this. Telling people what the weather's going to do. I can't believe I've done it for over 35 years. It's just, I'm so thankful for our viewers for watching and tuning in every day, and now tuning in on the cell phones and all the other screens we do. But thank you all very much.
And the public is going to come out of the woodworks, as we already have, to thank you. But again, thanks, Bob. Great working with you.
It's been a pleasure working with you, Jay.